My name is Lauren. I'm 34 and I live in Ohio. Last month, I won $2.5 million in the lottery. A week later, my mother burned the check because I wouldn't give half to my sister Madison. My father just stood there and said, "If you don't share, you don't deserve any of it." Growing up, I was never the chosen one. When Madison wanted something, it was a yes. When I needed help, it was a lesson in independence. They said it wasn't favoritism, just fairness. But love that needs explaining never feels safe. All my life I stayed quiet, I made myself small. I thought if I earned enough, they'd finally see me. Then I won the lottery, and they still didn't ask how I felt. If you grew up in a family where love came with conditions, stay with me. This story is yours too. Madison is my older sister. Since I was a kid, I knew she was the one they chose. When she wanted dance lessons, they found the money. When I needed a calculator for school, I picked up extra shifts bagging groceries. She dropped out of college twice. Each time they said she just needs time to find her path. I graduated early, never missed a bill, and got told, "You've always been so low maintenance." I never hated Madison. She didn't ask for their favoritism. But it hurt to be the afterthought, to watch them pour belief into her while I carried the weight of proving mine. I didn't want her spotlight. I just wanted to exist in the same light. But in my family, value was loud and visible, and I had learned to survive by being quiet. The day I won the lottery, I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at the numbers and crying without sound. $2.5 million. No more debt. No more counting gas money to get through the week. I called my best friend Olivia. She came over with 2 bottles of cheap wine and hugged me like it was real, because it was. For 2 days, I didn't tell my family, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted to feel it just for myself. Then Sunday dinner came. I brought dessert and my secret. When I told them, my mother dropped her fork. My father said, "You're joking." Madison clapped and said, "Oh my God, we're rich." That one word we sent a chill through me. I didn't say anything, but deep down, I knew something had shifted, and it wouldn't shift back. Later that night, my dad pulled me aside. He said, "I know it's overwhelming, sweetheart, but this could change all our lives." I asked, "What do you mean, our lives?" He smiled. "Well, Madison's business is in trouble. This could give her the reset she needs," Mom chimed in from the kitchen. "She's been trying so hard. It's not like she's asking for much." Madison didn't speak. She just looked at me, hopeful, expectant. Like this was already decided. I hadn't even met with a financial advisor. I hadn't touched a dollar. But they were already dividing it up. No one asked what I wanted. No one asked how I felt. They just saw a number and started making plans. And I realized this wasn't joy, it was strategy. And I was the jackpot. The next morning, Mom sent me a link to a luxury boutique website. "Madison just needs a marketing push," she wrote. "She already has inventory. This is perfect timing. No question, no conversation, just assumption." Madison followed up with a cheerful voice note. "Hey sis, no pressure, just wanted to show you a breakdown of what I need to get the shop back on track. We'll make it back in no time." We. Again. I stared at my phone for a long time, then turned it over and let the silence grow. What hurt wasn't the request, it was the ease of it. Like my win erased the years I'd scraped by alone while they poured everything into her. For once, I had something big, and somehow it still wasn't mine. That evening, Madison called again. She sounded sweet, too sweet. "I'm thinking just $80 an hour to start," she said. "That's barely a fraction of what you got." I cleared my throat. "I haven't made any decisions yet. I need to talk to a financial advisor first." There was a pause, then a quiet, practiced laugh. "Come on, Lauren. It's not like you're buying a yacht. It's me, your sister." I stayed silent. She added, "You know, Mom and Dad always said we'd take care of each other, but they never did. Not when I needed braces. Not when I had to skip prom because we couldn't afford a dress." I exhaled slowly. "I'll let you know," I said. Then I hung up. It was the smallest boundary. But in our family, even small lines feel like betrayal. The next morning, my phone lit up before 8 a.m. 3 missed calls from mom, 2 from dad. Then a text, "We need to talk about what's fair." Fair, that word again. It only shows up when they're not the ones holding the cards. By noon, Dad left a voicemail. His voice low-controlled. "You've always been the responsible one, Lauren. Now it's time to show leadership in this family." Leadership. They meant give in quietly like always, but I didn't feel responsible. I felt cornered. Olivia came over that night. I told her everything. She didn't say, "They mean well." She said, "They're crossing lines you haven't even drawn yet." And that stuck with me, because maybe this wasn't just about money. Maybe it was about finally learning where I end and they begin. I still went to Sunday dinner. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that they'd ask about my plans, my feelings, my life. But the moment I walked in, Mom smiled and said, "Madison has an update for you." Madison beamed. "I've already started designing the new packaging. We're gonna make this boutique shine." She hadn't even asked. She just assumed. I tried to stay calm. I haven't agreed to anything I said quietly. The room went still. Dad's voice cut in sharp. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her. And you're being selfish." I felt my hands tremble. All I had wanted was to share good news, to be seen. Instead, they looked at me like I had broken something sacred. That night, I drove home in silence. The money hadn't changed them. It had only revealed what was always there. The next day, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She brought Madison and a folder. Inside were spreadsheets, business projections, inventory costs, even a logo redesign. "We thought this would help you understand why $80,000 isn't that much," Madison said, smiling. I looked at the papers. So neat, so final, like I was just a signature away from saving everyone but myself. "I haven't decided," I said again. Mom's face fell. She didn't argue, she sighed. "You're not who I raised you to be." That hit harder than yelling ever could, because what she meant was, you were easier before, you knew your place, you gave without question. And now I was dangerous, because I was learning how to say no and live with the silence that follows. That night, I turned off my phone. No texts, no voicemails, just quiet. But silence in this family doesn't last long. The next morning, I got an email from Dad. Subject line, family, financial planning. Attached a spreadsheet titled Fair Distribution. My name, Madison's, percentages next to both. No greeting, no ask, just a blueprint for how to carve me up. I felt cold, not angry, just hollow. They weren't trying to hurt me. That would require seeing me first. They were trying to manage me like a resource, like a threat. I forwarded the email to Olivia. She wrote back one sentence, "This isn't love, Lauren, it's entitlement." And that was the moment I knew this wasn't confusion, this was war. They just didn't expect I'd fight back. That weekend, I came home from grocery shopping and found them waiting. Mom, Dad, Madison, outside my building, smiling like this was normal. "We need to talk," Dad said. "It's time to be reasonable." I didn't invite them in, but they followed me anyway. Inside, they didn't sit down, didn't ask permission. They took up space like it was theirs to claim. Mom glanced around and said, "This place is nice, but imagine what you could have if you shared." Madison stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. I asked, "How did you even know I'd be home?" Dad shrugged. "You're a creature of habit, Lauren." It wasn't said with warmth. It was control wrapped in concern. And suddenly my own apartment didn't feel safe anymore. Just exposed. Like I didn't own the air I breathed. Dad stepped closer. His voice calm, too calm. "You've had time to process this. Now it's time to do what's right." Mom nodded. Family supports each other. Always has. Then Madison finally spoke. "I just need a real shot, Lauren. One chance to make this work." Her voice cracked, but it didn't move me, because I'd seen this before, the tears that came right before the taking. I said, "I haven't decided anything yet," and Mom's face hardened. "That's not acceptable." I blinked. Not surprised, just exhausted. Madison stepped forward. I only need 80,000. That's nothing to you now. But it was everything, because it wasn't about the money, it was about the message: you don't get to choose. We still own you. And for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not guilt, resolve. I'm not giving Madison anything, I said, voice steady for once. The room went still. Dad's jaw clenched. Mom's eyes narrowed. Madison looked like I'd slapped her. You don't mean that, Mom whispered. You're just overwhelmed. No, I said. I'm finally clear. All three of them started talking at once about loyalty, about family, about everything they'd done for me. But I heard none of it, because for once I wasn't shrinking, I wasn't explaining. I was choosing me, and they didn't know what to do with that. You're making a mistake, Dad said, his voice low, warning. I met his eyes. No, I'm correcting one. The one where I thought love meant obedience, where I thought survival meant silence. Not anymore. I showed them the door, and when they didn't move, I opened it myself. They left without a word. No shouting, no slamming doors, just cold silence. But silence from people like them is never peace. It's a warning. I stood in the middle of my apartment and felt the air shift, not free but fragile. Like something had broken open and I didn't know what might crawl out. Olivia came over an hour later. I didn't even call her. She just knew. I told her what happened, every word, every look, every unspoken threat. She sat with me in the quiet, then said gently, "They're going to escalate. You know that, right?" I nodded, because deep down I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time, I wasn't scared of losing them. I was scared of what I might lose if I let them stay. The next morning, they started calling again. Mom left 4 voicemails, each one softer than the last. More guilt, less rage. "Think about your sister," she said. "She's struggling. You're in a position to help." By noon, a group text came in. Mom, Dad, Madison. "Let's have a calm talk. Tonight, 7 p.m. We'll bring dinner. You bring the paperwork." Paperwork! As if this was a deal and not my life. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my bank. Asked about account security. Then I called a locksmith. Changed every lock in the apartment. That night, I stayed at Olivia's place. She poured wine. We watched a movie. Laughed too loudly. But under the laughter was a tight knot in my chest. Because I wasn't just protecting money. I was protecting the version of me that was finally starting to breathe. 3 days later, I went back to my apartment to grab some work files. It was midday. Quiet, normal, until I unlocked the door and heard voices inside. Familiar voices. I froze, heart racing, then pushed the door open and saw them. Mom, Dad, by my coffee table. Smoke rising from a trash can between them. My ceremonial lottery check in flames. I rushed forward, but it was too late. Ash everywhere. Dad looked up, calm. "If you won't share, you don't get to keep it." I stared at him, words stuck in my throat. Mom crossed her arms. "Now maybe you'll think clearly." I wasn't even angry. Just stunned. Not because they burned it, but because they actually thought that was the real check and that destroying it would bring me back under control. I stared at the ashes, then started laughing. Not out of joy, out of disbelief. Mom looked confused. Dad frowned. "What's so funny?" he snapped. I wiped a tear from my cheek. "That check was just for photos. It's a prop." They froze. I pulled out my phone, opened the email from the lottery commission. I held it up. "The real money is coming by wire transfer. Straight to a secure account." Mom went pale. Dad's voice cracked. "You're lying." I shook my head. "You broke into my home to burn cardboard." They didn't speak. Didn't move. For the first time, I saw them clearly, not as parents, but as people who thought control was the same thing as love. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't before: freedom. Sharp, undeniable, mine. They left without apology. No regret, just bruised pride. Before the door closed, Dad turned back. "If this is your attitude, don't expect to be part of this family." I said nothing, because for once I wasn't begging to stay. After they were gone, I changed the locks again, booked a short-term rental across town. Quiet building, no one knew the address. Then I packed. Not just clothes, everything that still felt like mine. Olivia came to help. She didn't ask questions, just showed up with boxes and iced coffee. As we sealed the last one, she looked at me and said, "They won't stop." I nodded. I know, but this time I wouldn't just leave physically. I was leaving emotionally too. No more hoping they'd change. No more waiting to be seen. I was done asking for a seat at a table that kept pushing me off the edge. The next morning, my aunt texted, "Call me." "It's urgent." I did. She sighed. "Your mom's been calling everyone. Says you've turned your back on the family after all they've done for you." I closed my eyes. Of course. When guilt doesn't work privately, they use shame publicly. By noon, I had messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Polite concern masking pressure. "They're hurt. Just talk it out. It's not worth losing your family over money." But no one asked what they'd done, only what I hadn't given. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the lottery commission's transfer notice to my financial advisor. We set up layered security, biometric access, new accounts, because now I knew I wasn't just protecting my money. I was protecting my right to live without being emotionally robbed. That evening, I drove by my old apartment one last time. The mailbox was crammed with letters from Madison, handwritten. Same neat bubbly script she used on thank you cards. I took them upstairs, opened one. "I'm sorry if you felt pressured, but I really believed we were in this together." Another read, "You're being unfair. I've always supported you emotionally. Now I need you financially." Not once did she ask how I was coping, how it felt to have my family burn what they thought was my future. They still didn't get it. I sat on the floor surrounded by her letters and felt nothing. No rage, no sadness, just a clean, painful clarity. I picked up my phone and blocked every number with my last name. Not out of spite, out of survival. Some endings don't need closure, just distance. The next morning, I woke up in my new apartment. No familiar sounds, no lingering footsteps in my mind, just quiet. I made coffee, slowly sat by the window, and watched sunlight hit the floor like it belonged there. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. I opened my laptop, checked the account. The wire transfer had cleared. It was real, every dollar. Untouched. Mine. I didn't feel rich, I felt responsible, sober, ready. I texted Olivia, "It's done. I'm free." She replied in seconds, "You're not just free, Lauren. You're finally home." And maybe she was right. Because this place, these walls, this version of me wasn't built on permission. It was built on choice. And this time, I chose me. I didn't rush, didn't book a flight, didn't buy a car. Instead, I made a list. Pay off student loans, set up an emergency fund, find a good therapist. Not glamorous, but it felt like oxygen. At my first session, the therapist asked, "What made you finally walk away?" I paused, then said, "They burned a fake check thinking it would control me, and for once I let it burn." She smiled gently. "That wasn't the moment they lost you. That was the moment you found you." I hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. It wasn't about money. It never was. It was about finally recognizing that I was allowed to stop performing for people who never saw the cost of keeping them comfortable. And from that stillness, I started over. Not richer, but whole. Peace wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with confetti or some perfect morning. It showed up slowly in the quiet click of turning off notifications and drinking coffee without bracing for a guilt text. But peace has a cost. Grief. Not for what I lost, but for what I never had. A mother who asked how I was feeling. A father who defended me. A sister who didn't see me as a resource. That grief came in waves, stronger than anger, quieter than blame. I let it come. Didn't fight it, didn't shame it, because part of healing is mourning the fantasy you kept alive for too long. The family I hoped they could be never existed, but now neither did their control, and in that absence I began to feel something else. Not guilt, not fear, space. One night, Olivia and I sat on my balcony, a bottle of wine between us. She asked, "Do you miss them?" I didn't answer right away because the truth was complicated. I missed being included. I missed belonging even if it came with strings. But I didn't miss the silence when I needed help, the way love always had a price tag. I said, I think I miss who I pretended they were. Olivia nodded. That makes sense. Then she said something I still think about. You don't owe people access to you just because they gave you life. It landed deep, because for years I confused love with obligation, forgiveness with forgetting. But now I knew love doesn't demand silence. It doesn't punish boundaries. And it definitely doesn't burn what it claims to protect. A week later, an email landed in my inbox. Subject, let's talk. For real this time, it was from Madison. She wrote, I'm sorry things got out of hand. Mom and Dad went too far. But don't punish me for their mistakes. She ended with, if you could just help with half, I'll pay you back. Promise. No mention of the check, no mention of breaking into my apartment. Just a reset request on her terms. I stared at the screen, heart still mind clear. For a moment, the old reflex tugged, be the bigger person, keep the peace. But peace isn't giving in, it's knowing when you've given enough. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I was done. Done explaining, done negotiating my worth. Sometimes, closure isn't a conversation, it's choosing silence over self-erasure. The next morning, I deleted the email. No second read, no draft reply, just delete and breathe. It felt clean. I made breakfast slowly, chose my favorite mug, opened the windows like I was letting old ghosts out. Then I called my lawyer. I want to protect everything I said. Accounts, property, future plans. She didn't ask why. She already knew. We drafted boundaries in black and white. Power of attorney, restraining clauses, emergency contacts with only my name. I wasn't hiding. I was fortifying. Because love without respect is just manipulation in soft clothing, and I'd worn that fabric long enough. By noon, my financial advisor called. The final transfer is complete, she said. You're officially liquid, Lauren. But what I felt wasn't wealth. It was the quiet strength of finally being untouchable. With the money secure, I thought about what came next. Not shopping sprees, not revenge, just intention. I met with my advisor again. Told her I want part of this to mean something beyond me. We set up a small foundation, nothing flashy, just focused. Financial literacy for young women who, like me, grew up being told you'll figure it out. No one taught me about credit or interest or how shame keeps you broke. So now I teach them. We started small community college workshops, basic budgeting tools, real conversations, and for the first time, I felt powerful in a way that wasn't defensive. I wasn't just surviving, I was changing things. One girl walked up after class and said, I've never felt smart with money until now. I smiled, because that was wealth. A month later, an email showed up, subject, just, thank you. From a name I hadn't seen in weeks, Madison. She wrote, I know you blocked me. I get it now. I wasn't asking, I was expecting. Then I've taken a job at a bakery near my place. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. And for once, I'm not waiting to be rescued. I didn't know what to feel. There was no ask, no attachment, just quiet reflection. And somehow that hit harder than all the shouting ever did. I didn't reply, not yet. But I didn't delete it either. I read it twice, then saved it. Not as proof of change, but as proof that people can learn once you stop protecting them from the consequences they never wanted to face. Life settled, not into perfection, but into clarity. I woke up early, watered the plants on my balcony, and sat in silence with no one demanding an explanation for how I chose to exist. That stillness felt earned. Not bought with money, but with every no I finally had the courage to say. I used to think peace was something you waited for, something that arrived when everyone else stopped hurting you. But now I knew peace isn't passive. It's built, brick by brick, boundary by boundary. It doesn't ask for applause. It just asks that you stay when it finally shows up. So I did. I stayed. With my cup of coffee, my quiet home, and a heart that no longer needed permission to take up space. And that morning I didn't check my phone. I just lived. One Sunday, I met Aunt Maggie for coffee, the only relative who hadn't chosen silence or sides. She hugged me tight, the kind that says, "You don't have to pretend here." We sat by the window. She sipped slowly, then said, "Your mom called me again." Still trying to rewrite the story, I nodded. "I'm not angry anymore. Just done." Aunt Maggie reached across the table. "You've always deserved more than being someone's emotional backup plan." That stuck with me, because for years I thought family meant forever, no matter what. But now I knew family is who respects your boundaries when you finally find the strength to draw them. And if that circle is smaller, now that's okay. I'd rather sit at a table with one person who sees me than with 10 who only see what they can take. I bought a house, not a mansion, not a statement, just a quiet sunlit place with space to breathe. 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for guests, and one I turned into a library. Every book on those shelves was one I never had time to read when I was surviving. I painted the walls myself, chose soft greens and warm grays, not trendy, just peaceful. There were no family photos on display, just art I loved, memories I chose. People asked if I'd host holidays. I said no, not yet. This home wasn't for show, it was for healing. I walked barefoot through the hallway, tea in hand, and realized this wasn't just a place to live. It was proof that I could build something safe without asking anyone's permission, a home that didn't need their approval to feel like mine. Success didn't look like headlines, no interviews, no designer bags. It looked like paying off every cent of my student loans with one click and crying anyway, not because I was sad, but because the weight was finally gone, the invisible kind you carry in your spine for years. It looked like grocery shopping without checking my balance, buying flowers just because I like them. Olivia said, "You're so calm now, it's almost eerie." I smiled. I think I finally trust myself. Because for the first time, I wasn't chasing approval, wasn't hustling for a seat at someone else's table. I had built my own, sturdy, quiet, mine, no applause, no one clapping in the background, just me breathing in a life I didn't have to shrink inside. And that more than money felt like welt weeks past. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message request from Madison, just one line, no ask, just wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a while. No attachments, no links, no guilt, just quiet. She added, "I got promoted at work. I'm managing the morning shift. It's not much, but I'm finally standing on my own." There was no manipulation this time. No twist in her voice, just a woman learning to walk without leaning. I didn't reply right away, not because I was angry, but because I wanted to be sure my response came from clarity, not habit. That night, I sat on my porch with a blanket. The message still on my screen, and I whispered to no one, maybe people do change, but I changed first, and that's what saved me. A week later, I wrote back, "Thank you for your message. I'm glad you're finding your way. I wish you well truly." No bitterness, no open door, just peace. Forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't about letting someone back in. It was about letting the weight go so it wouldn't rot inside me. I didn't need an apology to validate what happened. I didn't need her to understand the years of quiet ache I carried alone. I just needed her to carry her own life now. Madison replied, "I understand. And I don't expect anything. But thank you for responding." That was it. No ribbon, no reunion, just 2 women finally living without the need to rewrite the past. And in that quiet ending, I found something no apology had ever given me release. I used to dream about the perfect confrontation, saying everything I'd never said, listing every wound like evidence in a trial. But when the chance came, I didn't take it. Not because I was scared, because I was free. I didn't need them to admit what they did. I didn't need their guilt to validate my healing. Some stories don't end with justice. They end with you refusing to carry pain you didn't create. My therapist once told me, "You win the moment you stop trying to prove it hurt." And she was right. So I let the silence be enough. No more calls, no more explanations. Just me living softly, firmly, without needing anyone to watch to make it feel real. Because this life, quiet, grounded, chosen, was proof enough. I never went back to the old house. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even out of curiosity. There was nothing left there but versions of me who never spoke up, who apologized for breathing too loud, who kept giving just to feel loved for 5 minutes. Staying gone wasn't punishment, it was protection. Aunt Maggie understood. She never pressured, just kept showing up with warm coffee and warmer silence. Once she asked, "Do you miss them at all?" I thought about it, then shook my head. I miss the idea of them, and she nodded like she'd heard that before. Because the truth is, some people only teach you what love isn't. And once you finally leave, the greatest gift is not having to go back to prove why you did. 1 year later, on the exact day I won the lottery, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine and no one's voice in my head but my own. The money changed things, yes, but not in the way people expect. It didn't make me powerful. It made me honest. It stripped away illusions I was too scared to let go of. It showed me who stayed when I said no, who vanished when I stopped performing. Olivia joined me as the sun dipped low. She raised her glass and smiled. To surviving, I shook my head, smiling back. No. To choosing, because survival is instinct. But choosing yourself over noise, guilt, and legacy, that's courage. And if anyone asks what the real prize was, I'll say this. A life that finally feels like mine, even if I had to lose a family to find it. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the background character in your own family, I see you. If you've been called selfish for setting boundaries, if your worth was only acknowledged when it was useful, I know that ache. You don't have to win the lottery to choose yourself. You don't need a dramatic break to walk away. Sometimes healing is simply not picking up the phone, not explaining the no, not carrying shame for what you didn't cause. You are not ungrateful. You are not too much. You are not wrong for wanting peace without permission. If this story sounds like yours, know this. It's not too late to rewrite the ending. You're allowed to be the first in your family to stop the cycle, even if it means walking alone for a while. The biggest twist wasn't the money. It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the fire. It was this, I didn't need their apology to heal. I used to think closure came from conversations, from being heard, understood, validated. But real closure came the moment I stopped chasing it, the moment I stopped asking people to see me who never looked in the first place. Forgiveness didn't come in words, it came in silence, in choosing peace over proximity, in creating a life that didn't revolve around proving my pain. And in that unexpected freedom, I found something better than winning self-trust. The kind that doesn't shake when they rewrite the story. The kind that doesn't shrink when they say you've changed. Because yes, I have. And thank God for that. If you made it here, thank you. Not just for listening, but for staying. For holding space for a story that isn't clean or sweet or easy to explain at dinner tables. I shared this not to shame anyone, but to set something down that I carried too long. And maybe you've been carrying it too. If you've ever said, "I'm fine," when you were quietly unraveling, if you've ever given more just to feel seen, I want you to know you don't have to keep doing that. You can start again, even if no one claps, even if no one follows. Because the greatest plot twist isn't the check or the fire or the fallout. It's the moment you stop waiting to be chosen and decide to choose yourself. Now tell me, what would your story look like if you did? If any part of this story felt familiar, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and you never know who might need it too. And if you're ready for more real, honest stories about choosing yourself, hit that subscribe button. Because this isn't just my journey, it's ours. And we're just getting started.